All right, this is Kymone Freeman, WEAC Radio, 1480 AM and WEACradio.com, DC's independent radio station, broadcasting from the 2013 new DC Auto Show. I'm sitting here with James Bill, Head of Consumer Affairs of GM. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for joining us. We want to talk to you about some of the green technology GM has been incorporating, and hopefully even talk about some of that Corvette business you was mentioning to us earlier.
Oh, well, talking Corvette's easy. But on the green side, I think the easiest way to kind of summarize what GM is doing is really where the industry is going. And in some respects, I think GM is kind of leading this move, which is a kind of a spectrum of electrification, which is going to give the ability for all manufacturers to hit the CAFE regulations that they need to meet in the U.S. market, but then also to meet the emission standards that are getting more and more difficult in Asia and across Europe. So the only way to do that is to have vehicles that aren't using gasoline at all, and that's where this electrification comes in. So when I talk about the spectrum, my sense is that in the next decade or maybe even a little bit less, everybody's going to drive a car that has some degree of electrification, whether it's something like what Buick and Chevrolet have, which is called e-assist. It's a small battery and a small electric motor that provides, I like to say, like an electric turbocharger. It gives you that little boost to allow a four-cylinder engine to feel like a six. And then it also allows the engine to turn off when you come to a stoplight and save a lot of fuel, so rather than just sitting there idling. In fact, once you drive one of these cars, a normal car feels very dirty when it's sitting there at a red light just chugging away. So you've got that e-assist on one level, and all the way up through a vehicle like our new Spark EV, which doesn't even know what gasoline's for. It's a full electric car. And then, of course, in the middle of that spectrum, you've got cars like the Chevrolet Volt, which has been out very successfully now for about 2 years, and the new Cadillac ELR, which was just introduced this month at the Detroit Auto Show, and is a Cadillac version of the Volt, but wrapped up in a much sexier package.
Well, in terms of green technology, DC as a city has actually been on the cutting edge of that. Yeah. We have a couple curbside electrical fueling stations, yeah. But we've had this current administration, and the president is scheduled to appear today. I'm told. Yeah. He's been talking about encouraging greater fuel efficiency, greater emission tests and standards. Mm-hmm. What do you say, in your opinion, has been the hindrances of achieving that in the automotive industry?
Well, excuse me, I don't think it's the industry that's fighting. And I think it's still a level of consumer acceptance, and that's a hard thing to move. The other part is you have to remember that the car business sells about 15 million new cars a year. However, there are about 700 to 800 million cars on the road. So only a small percentage of American drivers, excuse me, in any year are in the market. So we don't expect everybody to go out and sell their current 3-year-old car, which is doing fine for them, in order to get something electrified. It's going to take time for the older car to, need another set of tires or brakes and not want to, go through that expense and get into something new. So you've got the slow kind of turnover or churn that needs to go through. And I think that is a big point of it, that the industry is providing these vehicles, but it's just going to take time for people to get comfortable with it. Also is the fact that I think a lot of people still assume electric car means that they can only drive X amount of miles and then they're stuck at the side of the road if they can't find electricity. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. Now, in the very near future, I think we're going to see much greater infrastructure of charging stations. I personally think you're going to start to see them in front of Starbucks, in front of Walmarts, in front of libraries, places where people can stop in, take 20 minutes to get their latte, and get a quick charge while they're there. It might cost you a couple dollars, but to drive 80 miles for a couple dollars, that's pretty good business.
Well, that sounds completely rational, and I do see the validity in your case there. But at the same time, do you think that the 400-pound gorilla in the room is also the fossil fuel industry that may be, having an antagonistic relationship with the automotive industry regarding this type of technology that may cut into their profit margins?
Well, there's been that discussion about the petroleum business for 80 or 90 years, even going back to Firestone with tires in Southern California. There was a whole element of public transportation, which some have said that Firestone kind of bought them out, so LA would have to be a place you drove. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know about that, but I think that it's really an issue of having this distribution of electricity that's going to be coming. Businesses will get involved in it because they'll recognize that more progressive people are going to be owning these vehicles, and these are people that they want as customers. But it's going to take time. It's really the infrastructure that's going to lead this, and we're seeing some really strong efforts to build that infrastructure in.
I know you said your time with GM has been short, but what do you think has really bred the brand loyalty that you see here? I have not met people that say I only drive Toyota or I only drive, but I've constantly heard about GM brand loyalty. What do you think is that coming from?
Well, I think there's an element of pride and family history with many GM brands. In fact, we're getting ready to introduce a new Chevrolet Impala. It's just going to be going on sale later this year, actually in the springtime. And that's a car that, many people were raised in the back seat of one of those things, or maybe even started in the back seat of one of those, if you know what I'm saying. So there's it's built into the framework of the country, and not just GM, but also Ford and Chrysler to similar degrees. And I think that what you're seeing with GM is, well, it's said in the car business that there's no problem that good product won't fix. And GM, coming through its bankruptcy problems and all that, has really decided that the car is going to be what drives them out of this downslide, and it's working so far. People are excited to show somebody their new General Motors or Ford or Chrysler car because it's a good car, because it looks good, not just because they got a good deal on it.
Okay, well, I for one was conceived in a 1968 Pontiac GT, and so that had something to do with my family GM brand loyalty.
You know what? This is turning into quite the interview. I'm going to have to ask my parents where I was conceived. I'm jealous that you know that.
Well, you've been listening to James Bell, Head of Consumer Affairs here at General Motors. We are live here at the 2013 DC Auto Show. Thank you for speaking with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much.